ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني سيدنا ومولانا ومولى الثقلين بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الغر الميامين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد. ولعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم من حين عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط وأنزلنا الحديد فيه بأس شديد ومنافع للناس وليعلم الله من ينصره ورسله بالغيب إن الله قوي عزيز. آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. Respected elders, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, we all are thankful and grateful to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has given us this opportunity that we are present on such a wonderful day. Not only it is Friday, the day which is considered as the day which is the leader of the days of the week, Sayyidul Ayyam. And it's a kind of Eid for mu'mineen and Muslimeen and for the human being in terms of seeking proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to His Prophet and the holy progeny of the Prophet. But in addition to that, we are fortunate that this day coincides with the birthday anniversary of our beloved Prophet Ahmad Mujtaba Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and our sixth holy Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So as per many narrations, that 17th of Rabiul Awwal is the birth anniversary of these two ma'asumeen, these two very important, infallible personalities. Therefore, sometimes we call this day as the celebration of the birthday of Sadiqain, Jashn Sadiqain or Milad Sadiqain. One of the reasons behind that is that both of these ma'asumeen, they have the title of As-Sadiq. And in terms of the Prophet of Islam having this title, many of us, we are aware that it was due to the truthfulness and the strength of the character which Prophet, peace be upon him, showed even before the announcement of the prophethood, even before Bi'atha. He was famous among the people of Mecca, also among the people wherever he would travel to Damascus and other cities he would go, Shamat. So he would considered as a very truthful, upright, and honest person. Alaykum as-salam. So therefore he acquired that title. Therefore we know that these two titles, As-Sadiq and Al-Amin, the trustworthy, these two titles are very famous, and everyone would know and remember and recognize the Prophet of Islam with these two titles even before the announcement or the proclamation of the message of Islam. And that itself shows us the importance of the strength of the character wherever we are, wherever we live, and whatever society we are living in. Our character has to be that strong that before we open our mouth to speak to the people, people have observed the strength of our character. Through these two noble traits, at least two noble traits, being the truthful and being the trustworthy. And in fact, I have become mindful of one of the ahadith. The hadith, Ma'soom says, and let me paraphrase, the exact wordings are not in my mind, that I think, al-kidhbu miftahu kulli shar. So that, let me paraphrase, the meaning of the hadith says that all the evils, they begin with lying. So being truthful is very important characteristics a person should acquire. In fact, now I remember that the relationship of this saying of the Ma'soom with a story that someone comes to the Ma'soom and says that, tell me one thing. You have a laundry list of do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. So tell me one thing so I can practice upon that and I will be saved and I will go to the heavens. So Ma'soom tells him that stop lying, just one thing. So if you make this as the habit and you don't lie anymore, then I guarantee that you will go to the heavens. So if we were to analyze and review our characters, many of the problems we have is that we are not upright because our speech and our conduct is not truthful. Therefore, this is one of the titles. And again, our sixth Holy Imam, he showed some of the traits of his characters during his time that people would give the same title to him. And another relevance in terms of the connection between these two Ma'soomin, the Prophet of Islam and the sixth Imam, there is another very important connection, that the Prophet of Islam was someone who brought the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the divine message to the society, which was known as the society of ignorance. And even until this day and age, when you see the pre-prophetic history, you will see that people would name that era as the time of ignorance, al-Asr al-Jahiliyyah. And the reason behind that was that there were no moral or ethical values in the society. Some of the moral values they would consider as their values, they were against and they were in contradiction with the human values. For instance, ruling someone who is powerful. For instance, having pride in having male offspring and being ashamed of having female offspring. For instance, oppressing the weak. For instance, looting the stranger. So these were some things which we see in that society that people would pride, and Quran refers to that, that whenever someone was given the news of the birth of a baby girl, their face would turn, their face would change the color due to anger. وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدٌ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. To that extent that the color of face would change, the person would become angry. And we know through the historical accounts, some of them, they would kill their baby girls even right after the birth. And Quran refers to that reality that on the Day of Judgment, these innocent dead girls would ask, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. On the Day of Judgment, they would ask Allah that why we were killed, why we were not given the right of living in this world. And this is one of the rights. Islam recognizes that any soul who is born has equal rights, no matter the religion, faith, creed, social or cultural background. Every soul has right to live in this world, and no one can take that right away from someone. Therefore, the verse which I have recited is from Surah Al-Hadid, and let me connect that opening ayah with the topic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, alaykum salam, verse number 25 of Surah Al-Hadid. لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ عَلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I have sent my apostles, my Rasul, بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ, with the signs. وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. And I have sent with them the book and al-Mizan. So I will explain what is al-Mizan through the ahadith and riwayat. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. But let me translate this portion first. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I have sent the prophets. They are having the signs, divine signs, and they are having Mizan. The reason why I have sent them, so they become and establish the justice in the society. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. One of the major reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the prophets to the humanity, any prophet, starting from Hazrat Adam, Nuh, Isa, Musa, Ibrahim, all the prophets, 124,000 prophets, they have come to establish the justice in the society. How they would establish the justice? Because Allah has given them two things. Quran refers to those two things. Al-Kitab wal-Mizan. Al-Kitab is the book, and referring to Al-Kitab, Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We know the first few verses of Surah Al-Jumu'ah by heart. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. Again, kitab. So I want to make a connection between these two verses. The verse number 25 of Surah Al-Hadid and the second verse of Surah Al-Jumu'ah. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that I have sent the prophets to the humanity with the book and al-mizan, the criteria, the scale of making the falsehood and truthfulness different from the wrong. And then, wal kitab, and the book of the guidance. Surah Al-Jumu'ah says that the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have come for what? Rasulam minhum yatlu alayhim ayatihi. They recite the ayat of Quran. Wa yuzakkihim, and they purify the people. Wa yu'allimuhumul kitab wal hikmah, and they teach the book and the wisdom. So if you take the first verse in which al-qist is there and mizan, and now you compare that verse with this one, how can we combine? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the prophets to establish the justice in the society. And to execute that responsibility and the duty, they have further tasks. Among them, recitation of the verses of the book and purification of the heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yuzakkihim wa yu'allimuhumul kitaba wal hikmah. And the teaching of the book and the wisdom. So in other words, that if a prophet were to establish the justice in the society, these are the tools for the establishment of the justice in the society. The first one, and the most important one, I would say, Quran refers to that, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. And some of the scholars, they have mentioned that why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ or tazkiyah or the purification prior to the ta'aleem of kitab and hikmah, prior to the teaching of the book and the wisdom, is that unless a person has purified himself or herself, even this book of Allah will not be helpful for that person. So the first prerequisite is to purify ourselves. Therefore, when we speak about the question I posed in the beginning, the relationship between the Prophet of Islam and the sixth Imam, one relationship which I wanted to mention, that he stood up for that justice in the society, the Prophet of Islam, in that society where people were living during the time of ignorance, by purifying the hearts of the people, helping them through the books of Quran, the verses of the Quran. And Imam al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he revived the same values again. So now, some of you might ask that we know that historically when we speak about through the history what is given to us, what is written, and the objectivity of that is still questionable, but again we see the golden era of Islam is there. So many of us, we are aware that the later Abbasid period, during that time Islam flourished in terms of the role of Muslim thinkers, scholars, philosophers, scientists in the advancements of science and knowledge. Interestingly, when you go back and trace back all those expertise, you will see that goes back to the values established by our fifth and sixth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir and Imam Ja'far Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhima. And historically, one of the reasons is that that time was coinciding with the time where we see the rule of Banu Umayyah is ending and the time of Banu Abbasid dynasty is starting. So that was the time where these two imams, they got the opportunity to establish that fundamental institution of Islam, to encourage people. Again, the verse, Surah Jum'ah, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. So the wisdom and the knowledge and tazkiyah prior to that. So our fifth and sixth holy imam, they established that institute, and they reiterated those values which were delivered and mentioned by the Prophet of Islam. And after that, we see that many advancement in Muslim world which took place, no matter it was in terms of the translation movements or in terms of the advancements of the science. We know Jabir bin Hayyan, and we know Khwarizmi, and we know all those scientists and Al-Kindi and the scholars and the theologians. All those somehow they go back to Imam al-Sadiq directly sometimes or indirectly. Therefore, we have some of the historical accounts, even the jurisprudential schools in Islam. We know 4 other jurisprudential schools: Al-Hanafi, Al-Maliki, Al-Shafi'i, and Hanbali. So all these 4 schools, their imams, they were also connected to the school of Imam al-Sadiq, directly or indirectly. So that also shows us the flourishment of Islamic knowledge as well during the time of 5th and 6th Imam, especially during the time of 6th Imam. He has contributed immensely towards the advancement of knowledge, science, and the religion. So that is one of the commonalities which we see during the time of the Prophet and again during the time of as-Sadiq. Therefore, one of the reasons that some of you might ask, especially our youth, that why in general we, the followers of 12 Imams, why we call Ja'fari in general, that we are from Ja'fari school of thought. Why don't we say that we are from Mustafawi school of thought in Islam, or we are not from Alawi? So all of the Imams are there. The part of the reason is that the values which were delivered by the Prophet of Islam and which were also delivered by or taken along by Amirul Mu'mineen and later Imams, again one more time, during the 6th Imam, they were flourished. And after that, many of the jurisprudential schools, they were separated and they were distinguished. And the Ja'fari school was actually, it is one of the fundamental and the primary schools which goes back to the Prophet. Therefore, we are recognized by the fiqh of Imam al-Sadiq, that in our jurisprudence, we follow the tariq or we follow the guidance and the teachings of Imam al-Sadiq. Therefore, we are known in comparison to Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. Otherwise, we have the same faith, we have the same Islam, we have the same values, same teachings, which were delivered by the Prophet. Therefore, in other words, as we are Ja'faris, we are Alawis. As we are Ja'faris, we are Mustafawis. As we are Ja'faris, we are Kadhimis. So all of them, they have the same values, same teachings, which was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to them. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. So I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with the insight to practice upon the teachings of Islam and to seek the closeness and nearness to the Prophet of Islam and Ahlul Bayt. Inshallah, in second sermon, I would like to quote a couple of ahadith to take some heed for us in order to practice in our lives the values and the teachings taught by the Ma'asumeen. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our major and minor sins, Ya Allah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Please recite 3 loud salawat. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد المصطفى خاتم النبيين وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء الصديقة الكبرى وعلى الحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة وعلى علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي باقر العلم الأولين والآخرين وجعفر بن محمد الصادق البار الأمين وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى رضا المرتضى ومحمد بن علي التقي الجواد وعلي بن محمد الهادي والحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي حججك وأمنائك على بلادك اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك قاضي الحاجات إنك رافع الدرجات إنك على كل شيء قدير وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أيها الإخوة والأخوات أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Dear brothers and sisters, I enjoin myself and I invite all of you towards the righteousness, towards the piety, towards the taqwa, which is indeed the only course of salvation in this world and to achieve the triumph in hereafter as well. Being mindful of the halal, whatever is permissible to act upon, and being mindful of all the muharramat or forbidden acts, whatever is impermissible to do, and staying away from that is the key to success in this world and in hereafter. Brothers and sisters, as we are celebrating these days the birthday of these two ma'asumeen, it's imperative for us to know some of their words, because one of the reasons Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the Prophet for us, especially I'm speaking about the last and the final and the seal of the prophets, our Prophet, Ahmad Mujtaba Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Verily, there is a perfect example in the life of the Prophet for us in order to follow him and in order to being righteous in this world. So when we talk about the practice of the Prophet, his words and the practice, they are same. So we do not see any difference between the words he says and the practices he performed. Therefore, when we look at some of the words, he says, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has resurrected me or sent me to perfect the ethics and morals of the people. So morals and akhlaq, as we refer to tazkiyatun nafs in the first sermon, it is very important for us, and purifying our morals, correcting them, is one of the examples of purification. Therefore, making a connection these two personalities, one of the ahadith of our sixth Imam I would like to quote, and it is indeed one of the keys, I would say, to resolve many of the problems we have in this day and age. We see anxiety, depression, sometimes we are not satisfied. You know, I was reading the other day a research that happiness has become the most difficult thing to find in this world in this day and age. And in fact, I was reading England has appointed a special minister in the government to make sure that people are happy. So it is one of the most rare things. So how to find the happiness? We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us some keys. For instance, Quran refers to that, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ala bidhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. That if you really want to see the tranquility, the peace, the satisfaction, that is only in the remembrance of Allah. You are trying to find that in wealth, you are trying to find in the cars, you are trying to find that in games, you are trying to find that in worldly and materialistic things, where there is no end. Because whatever you buy, whatever you get, there is something better than that. And when you see that and you want to be satisfied on materialistic values, then again you become depressed. So this game, oh, next year another game. Not only next year, just a few days later, there is another version. So every 6 months there is a new model of phone, a new model of car. And if you talk about the houses, so 5 bedrooms and attached baths, and for instance, swimming pool, or for instance, inside covered, one outside, one jacuzzi. There is no limit of this world. So we cannot find peace in those things, no matter whatever we have, whatever bank balance, whatever job, whatever worldly things we have. These are very important in order to receive that eternal satisfaction, which Quran says, بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. So these are the means, these are the ways to achieve that remembrance of Allah. So this saying of Imam al-Sadiq, with that introduction I would like to mention that hadith as well. Imam al-Sadiq says why people they become angry, why people they become sad, they become depressed. الرغبة في الدنيا تورث الغم والحزن. The extreme love and affection and inclination towards this dunya brings sadness and distress, gham and huzn. We use those words in Arabic, Urdu, Farsi, in all three languages. And you are very well aware, gham and huzn, what are those two words? So extreme anger, extreme sadness, depression. All those are related somehow one another, some conditions, some states, unless it is a mental health issue which really needs to be addressed by a professional person, a counselor, or a psychiatrist, whatever it is. But usually, the lack of satisfaction we have in our attitude, Imam al-Sadiq says, it comes when we are so much into this world. We always think about this world. The cars, the houses, the money, the games, the computers, whatever we see around us. And then he speaks about the opposite state as well. وَالزُّهْدُ فِي الدُّنْيَا رَاحَةُ الْقَلْبِ وَالْبَدَنِ. So being needless to this world. Az-zuhd when you don't care about. Az-zuhd, sometimes it is applied to the practice of, as we apply sometimes, praying a lot or being included in always being in worship form. But az-zuhd, that a person cares less about this world, does not care about this world. Az-zuhdu fi dunya rahatul qalbi wal badan. That if a person, he is having no inclination towards this dunya, that person will be satisfied in his heart and in his body as well. You know, this is something very interesting. And as I have said, I'm not qualified psychiatrist or the counselor, but you read the researches, you see that mental health or the mental peace has the direct connection with the physical well-being as well. Many of the diseases we see that doctors, they would say, for instance, heart diseases, or we see sometimes the other diseases, they are there because of the depression, because sometimes there is restlessness. So we see those are connected. And Imam al-Sadiq at that time is telling us that if you are satisfied in your life by not thinking a lot about this world, it will bring happiness not only to your soul, but also to your body as well. So this is one of the words of Imam al-Sadiq, but one point I would like to mention that as when we speak about this world, it is imperative to know that Islam tells us that word is very important. So we cannot just be an ascetic and extend that tomorrow we leave everything and we start living in the jungles. No. Islam, especially school of Ahlul Bayt, they have taught us. In fact, sixth Imam. So let me conclude my second sermon with that story, that he teaches us how to live in this world, but again, you live in this world in a way that you are not attached to this world. So one time someone comes to our sixth Imam and says that, look at this person, he claims to be the successor of the Prophet, and look at the dress he's wearing. Wonderful clothing, soft clothes, and is he not supposed to be an ascetic person and wearing very simple, harsh and hard clothes? So he says that in public. And Imam ﷺ calls upon him. So you know the Sufi sect. So they were flourishing at that time in opposition to our sixth Imam and Ahlul Bayt as well. So Islam teaches us how to live in this world successfully and not to be engaged to this world. Imam Sadiq says, okay, come next to me, close to me. And Imam takes his hand and takes his hand inside clothing, the underclothing he was wearing. And he touches that clothing and brings his hand out. Oh, it's too hard. It's too rough. What are you wearing inside? And Imam says that the clothing which I'm wearing as the undergarments is very rough and hard to tame myself, to teach my soul, to keep myself in order not to be attached to the luxuries of this world. But for worldly reasons, to show the dignity and respect in the society and live like the ordinary dignified people, I need to wear these clothing as well. But If I were to know what kind of clothing you are wearing as undergarment, you will see that your undergarments are very soft, but your above garments, your regular garments are very hard or rough. So in that way, Imam al-Asr is saying that live in this world, but use the provisions and the belongings of this world as these are temporal. So we should not be, so no matter whatever car we drive, whatever computer we have, whatever phone we have, whatever house we do live in, so we should not be attached to that. Because end of the day, Allah has mentioned that reality. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Everyone who has come to this world has to go back to Allah, has to return back to Allah. We have come to this world empty-handed, even without clothing. And we will return back to Allah in a state where our body will be wrapped in 2 pieces of cloth. That is the reality of this world. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to attain piety and to be attached to Ahlul Bayt and to seek the guidance and knowledge through their sublime and divine teachings, Ya Allah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات صلاة الجمعة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. يا محسن قد أتاك المصيبة. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما